Robert M. Price has this saying, oh, what a tangle web we weave when first we practice to believe. In philosophy and in psychology, we often characterize beliefs as what are called propositional attitudes, an attitude towards a proposition. So, I mean, to believe something is to think that something is the case, to think that something is true, right? So if I say the cat is on the mat, that's a proposition, okay? That I hold a certain attitude towards the proposition the cat is on the mat, namely that I believe it, that I think it is true, that it is the case. That's what it is to have a belief. You can have different attitudes. For instance, I can fear that the cat is on the mat. I can hope that the cat is on the mat. I can desire that the cat is on the mat. I can regret that the cat is on the mat. If I regret that the cat is on the mat, well, that means I have to at least think that the cat is on the mat. Whereas if I hope that the cat will be on the mat, right, that doesn't commit me to believing it, right? So some propositional attitudes imply that you already hold another propositional attitude of belief, and other propositional attitudes don't require that you already hold a propositional attitude of belief. So these are not mutually exclusive; they can be combined. And beliefs don't have to be understood as something that is actually being experienced right now. Like right now, if you ask me, Ozzy, are you a Canadian citizen? I'll say, yes, I am a Canadian citizen. I believe that I am a Canadian citizen. It is the case that I am a Canadian citizen. So right now I have a current belief. But it would also make sense to say, even when I'm asleep or not thinking about the question, it would be correct to say Ozzy believes that he's a Canadian citizen. A belief is a state of disposition. It is something that it is a proposition that you would assent to, even though you're not necessarily assenting and affirming it right now. So beliefs can be explicit and they can be implicit. Beliefs don't exist in isolation. You can't just believe in one proposition. You can only believe in a proposition if you believe in a whole lot of other propositions. You can't believe that the cat is on the mat unless you believe that there are cats, unless you believe there are mats, unless you believe that there is a physical spatial relationship of being on top of, and that cats can be on top of mats. So even to get as far as believing a simple proposition like the cat is on the mat requires that you believe a whole host of things that you might never even realize that you believe. Even your explicit, conscious, well-thought-out beliefs rest on implicit beliefs, a whole background, a whole network, a web of beliefs, if you will. So there's no beliefs in isolation. If you have a reason to believe something, you have a reason to believe something. That's different than having a motivation to believe something.
I was brought up as a Christian, and so it was told to me. I accepted it because it was told to me. And I came to the conclusion that there's so many things that happened in my life up to that point that could only be answered by God that I had to accept it. So I was certain, 100%, I would have died for that belief.
I grew up believing that practically everything, if not everything, was nature. The foundation for that was my parental upbringing. My dad strongly held to that, to the point that there were political reasons for him to insist. So that's sort of what I grew up thinking must be the case.
I believed a lot of things and nothing. I grew up in an academic, steeped in academia in my family. My dad is a professor of philosophy, and the whole family is very intellectually active. I was always fascinated with magic as a little kid, magic and mythology, but it didn't mean anything more than something that I enjoyed playing with. They would have been horrified if I believed in God. They would have been horrified. They were and are hard atheists.
I was raised in the Mormon faith. So I believed a Christian philosophy to a certain extent, and also the Mormon essence that goes along with that. I believed that everything was for God's kingdom, that the earth was here, so that we could progress the living church, and that every single action was for that purpose.
My parents did take us to Baptist church, There was a couple of times where I went to my grandfather's church, and they were like extreme Southern Baptists. I was probably only like 5 years old, and I'll never forget this. I was at their church, and I was in the children's Sunday school service, and there was a man up there talking about how when we die, that we're gonna all be in heaven, everybody, and my entire life is going to be played on a screen for everyone to see. It petrified me. So I'll never forget that, and I think that always kind of stuck in my head throughout my entire Christian life. That set the stage for the type of God I was dealing with, pretty much.
In your thinking about any particular belief, that particular belief is nested in a whole network of other beliefs that are probably completely unquestioned by you. You might not even be aware of all these implicit beliefs.
It meant that people aren't changeable, that people are sort of fixed, and that they're fixed because of their genetics. So it closed a lot of doors in terms of not only my view of people, but my view of myself in terms of could I change, how could I change, could I have control over change, and that kind of thing.
I saw every conversation as an opportunity to talk about Jesus, and if I didn't talk about Jesus in that conversation, I would go away from that conversation feeling very guilty.
Holding a certain rank, holding a certain title, being married, the existence of money, these are all social and institutional facts that are constituted out of our social reality. They make up the social reality, and the social reality is made up of collective intentionality. That is, it is made up out of people walking around holding certain beliefs in their heads in common. And if we didn't all hold those beliefs in common, if there weren't enough of us believing that, then these social facts would simply disappear. The aim of introspection and self-reflection and philosophical self-analysis is to help yourself understand what your belief commitments are and aren't.
I had what I would have called healthy doubt. What took my doubts from healthy doubts to, at the time, doubts that I saw as dangerous was, if I get upset here, I apologise, but my wife and I had a child. She was pregnant, and at the 20-week scan, we found that the child had Edwards syndrome, and it was fairly certain that child was going to die. It was only sort of after he died at 31 weeks, probably a year, 2 years later, after our second son was born, that I started looking back over everything and thinking, hold on, there's so much stuff here that just doesn't make sense. And I started to ask all of these other questions, and God as a concept came crumbling down.
Things that he said that were based on his philosophy that everything must be nature, that didn't sit with me. So stereotypical kinds of remarks that were probably more political in nature, but when I was young, I didn't know that. So I assumed that he assumed that those people are that way, and it doesn't matter what group you're talking about, because of their genetics. And then if I think of sort of episodics, the big one for me was we had a little dog, and my mother was trying to train this dog. And it was so obvious to me, even as a young kid, that the stuff she was doing was just so stupid and not effective. And she didn't seem to be watching the dog to see how he was responding to what she was doing. And I would hear the two of them have arguments over it, and his responses just seemed ludicrous. Like, you'll never do that. He'll never do that. He's a dog. Dogs can't X, right? So then I went to the library and got a dog training book, and it sort of opened my eyes a lot. And that sort of is what started me on the path to animal training in general. But that was sort of the crux of it, I think. I saw that it wasn't true, even with this dog.
I came to Tennessee. There they introduced me to a lot of Native American traditions and a lot of Central American traditions. And during the practices of that completely out of the blue, I had this crazy thing happen. And I had this crazy thing where my mind either broke or something. I've concluded that it's the same thing that the Buddhists call satori and the Hindus call moksha. Ego death. I don't know. There's no way I can describe it, but lots of people have it. I suspect it's the same thing that people speak about when they say that they have had revelation.
I think it was, at least 6 or 8 months before I realized and was able to come to terms that Christianity probably or possibly wasn't literally true. The non-belief in God, to me, when I left the church, it didn't seem possible. It's really hard to shake these baseline beliefs. When you're indoctrinated as a youngster, it takes so many more years to realize that wasn't true. I think it has to do with how our brain develops. It develops a certain way, and when we have just everything set up to believe in these ideologies that we realize aren't true, but it's still difficult to understand how come they're not true and how come I believed them.
My friend Eve Reel, when she deconverted, that kind of threw me for a loop. Then I watched that Cosmos: A Space-Time Odyssey show, the whole show. I was hooked. And that is like the defining moment that really made me take that first step, just 1 foot out the door. And then I realized how small the world is, like our planet, and compared to this whole of creation God supposedly made. And I was like, how can God be so small in his moral character and even his end game plan when there's this huge universe filled with space and things going on? I just really felt like, we were small, and the whole biblical God was a very small idea in the grand scheme of things.
There are all kinds of facts in the world, okay? Some facts are what we call institutional facts, social facts, okay? So the fact that I am Canadian rests on the fact that there are all kinds of people out there that believe that there is this country called Canada. If people don't hold certain beliefs, certain facts disappear.
I made the active choice to go with what evidence I had in front of me, and as a result, my belief disappeared. I didn't choose not to believe. My belief disappeared because of my active choice to acknowledge evidence. I said hello to agnostic atheism, saying I don't know what there is. I'm not saying there isn't a God. I'm not believing in a God anymore.
I could come to him with my questions and stuff like that, and he would sit and really talk about it and things like that. So he was willing to talk about it, but he always closed the door at the end. He would try to reinterpret something I would bring up so that it had to be nature, and he would bring in multiple examples of obvious nature things, eye color and stuff like that. And so I'd say he appeared open, but probably wasn't, and maybe rightfully so because I was little. And then as I got older and I started to see him continuing to think that way, or perhaps think that way, in social circumstances, then I started to really challenge him. And then he appeared to back down. Now, since then, he has been influenced by other people, and I think he really has sort of changed his opinion on this a little bit.
I was standing in a medicine wheel circle with a bunch of people who had been studying the Toltec stuff. It's basically another mind practice similar to Buddhism. Somehow, one of these dudes put his hand on my back, and pushed me through that veil. Just pushed me through it. I don't know how, I don't know what, it doesn't make any sense to me, but that happened.
For quite a while, I was still questioning about which one do I want to be a Buddhist? What do I want to do? Even up until I came into the community, this community about 4 years ago now, I really hadn't thought that atheism was something that I ever would want to embrace, because I really didn't understand it. Now I definitely agree with it.
Right now, I do not believe in any gods at all. I feel like I don't have enough reason to warrant even questioning if there is one. I definitely don't believe in any kind of theistic God. I don't think there's any God that interacts with us at all.
If you could help us to get a framework for understanding why it is that some of us hold a particular given belief, and then how that relates to the way we relate to reality in general, that's probably a big question. But if you can summarize that in 30 seconds or less, I'd be really pleased. But
I can't summarize anything in 30 seconds. I can't say my phone number in 30 seconds. But okay, I could take a stab at this. Okay, I guess the first distinction I would make here that would help us understand, there's a difference between believing something and professing to believe something. I believe this is a human hand, and I am professing right now that this is a human hand that I'm holding up. I didn't decide to believe that this is a human hand. I can't muster a sincere doubt that this is my own human hand in front of me here. That belief is caused in me. I didn't decide it. And you can be caused to believe things in all kinds of ways. You can be caused to believe things because someone you absolutely trust, like your parents, tells you that something is the case. But one of the things that happens, and it isn't dishonest, but it can get us into trouble, is that we can believe a number of things, and then we find out that our beliefs imply something else. Sometimes you can take on a whole package of beliefs at once, almost like a political party platform. And next thing you know, because you pledged loyalty to that party, you find yourself mouthing the words, professing to believe, defending other things that you don't actually believe, but that are part of their platform. The edifice of our belief should be understood, I think, as a map, our picture of reality. And there are holes in our map. And very often we're strongly motivated to want to fill in a section of the map. Right? We want answers to what we judge based on our other beliefs to be important questions. And so we will sometimes fill in the blanks. We'll sometimes draw in the map simply based on looking at another person's map. My view is that one should never be loyal to one's beliefs. You should never be loyal to your map of reality. Right? Your map is there to serve you. You're not there to serve your map. And so you should not be loyal to your beliefs.
I've never been bored. I've never been bored since not being a Christian. There's never nothing to do. I could sit in a chair for hours and while away the time just thinking about things, and I love that.
It's hard to know if that one particular change, just the nature-nurture question, is what has made the biggest change in me, or if it's more having experience with someone with autism has made the bigger change. But they must be related. But for sure, it has made me way more compassionate. It has made me way more understanding, way more sympathetic, and able to, like, if I see like a scene in the grocery store where ordinarily I would have thought, I'll never be that kind of mom. I'll never let my kid do that, that kind of thing. Those sorts of judgmental sort of things that spark in your mind, they don't happen anymore. So it's really changed me in terms of compassion and understanding to other people.
Where I have reached now is a perspective shift where I have the ability to step back. I can step back from what's going on. And that's important to me because I get really, really passionate about things, and I get really, really hurt by things. And I tend toward extremes. Having this background, it's kind of like that experience receded into a part of my mind, but is always hovering there. It's always, that awareness is always there, and it never has gone away fully. So I can stop myself from entering the game.
I'm able to live life on life's terms. I'm saying if this is all there is, if this is my life, then everything needs to be so appreciated in a different way. Not with the thought of a reward or an afterlife or anything like that, but with just living life on life's terms, because this is what there is, and I became more of a humanist. I became more of an empowered person, and that was wonderful.
As a Christian, my life was focused on helping people. Like, that's what I felt like my purpose was for. I'm supposed to be the salt of the earth. I'm supposed to make this horrible place that we're stuck in more palatable for the people who don't have Christ. Like, that was what I thought my job was. And I still can be some salt, and I still am, and I still help people, maybe even a little more now, because there was a time where, like, when I was a Christian, I might not help certain people because I thought that they were a lost cause, or that God was letting them go through some hard times for a reason. And now I don't think about any of that. Like, if somebody needs help, I'm going to do what I can to help them. So it's changed me in that regard, which I think is so much better.
Ethnic identities and stuff like that, and cultural identities and religious identities and political identities are the kinds of things that inspire loyalty, allegiance. And that I think is a liability. I mean, anyone who respects the truth needs to try as much as possible to not be loyal to their beliefs, and to recognize where your beliefs come from, and that some of your beliefs might be poorly motivated, right? They might come from a sense of loyalty and allegiance to an identity group. Being aware of this liability is one of the best ways to sort of shake off some of its effects, or at least mitigate the harm that this does. It's hard to overstate how much we profess to believe more than we actually do believe. Robert M. Price has this saying, oh, what a tangle web we weave when first we practice to believe.